Welcome to Lord Nightmare channel. We share scary stories with rainy ambience. I hope this video helps you in some way to sleep, relax, or just be entertained for a while. If you enjoy it, please think about subscribing and hitting the thumbs up button to help my channel out. Now let's begin. This happened about 4 years ago. My girlfriend and I were both 21 years old. We were driving up Highway 1 past Davenport, California. We spent the day at the beach and drove around some back roads in my Jeep. It started getting late, so we decided to head home. If you're not familiar with California's Highway 1, some stretches of the highway run along cliffs high above the ocean. There are a lot of turnouts along the way where people stop to watch the sunset. We were on a stretch of the highway far from any houses or businesses when I drove past a turnout that's almost always occupied by a car at sunset. This time it was empty. Since it was around sunset, I made a U-turn and backed into the spot. The turnout was small, with a huge dirt mound on one side and a steep cliff face with a trail going up about 60 feet on the other side. The gap between the two was about 16 feet. The mound was on the passenger side and the cliff face was on the driver's side. We were close to the edge, but it wasn't a sharp drop. There was a medium-sized dirt mound to prevent cars from rolling off the cliff. We were stoked to be there. We sat in the back of my Jeep, facing out over the ocean, watching the sky turn red. It was nice. About 25 minutes later, my girlfriend hopped out to get her water from the front of the car. When she came back and sat down, a black BMW SUV pulled up. As I said, the spot was tight enough for only one car, and though you could park two, it would mean parking directly in front of my car, blocking me in. That's exactly what this guy did. I was pretty annoyed because I think it's rude to block someone in a small spot. My girlfriend said, "What the hell?" I replied, "I know, right? What a rude guy." Then she added, "No, I mean I saw that car drive past when I was getting my water, and the guy looked at me. So it's weird that he turned around and parked here." That was strange and made me more annoyed. But it was a nice evening, so we brushed it off, thinking the guy would probably leave soon. We continued enjoying the sunset. 10 minutes later, the driver stepped out of his car. He was a yuppie-looking guy, probably in his late 40s or early 50s, about 6'3". He was wearing a button-up shirt and tie. He looked around, then slowly walked to the back of my car on the passenger side. He said hello to my girlfriend and me, and we replied, "Hi." There was a pause, and then he looked over the edge of the cliff and said, "That's a long way down." He turned back to us with a creepy half-smile. I was already feeling weirded out, so I just replied, "Yeah, it sure is," with a force to laugh at the end. He then asked, "Do you guys have any cigarettes? Maybe something healthy like American Spirits?" He called them healthy. Coincidentally, I did have some American Spirit cigarettes. They were on the dashboard in the front, so he must have seen them, making the way he asked to seem even weirder to me. I gave him one and he said, "Ah, yes, thank you." He went back to his car and started rummaging through the back. My girlfriend and I exchanged looks. I said, "Isn't this kind of weird?" "Yeah, and why did he make that cliff comment?" She replied. A few minutes later, the guy came back with a fold-out chair and a small duffel bag. He put the duffel bag on the ground, folded up the chair, and sat right next to us about 3 feet away. He didn't have the cigarette I gave him anymore, and I don't think he even smoked it. He randomly started asking us questions like, "Are you guys homeless?" I just looked at him and said, "No man, we're not homeless." laughing awkwardly, trying to stay cool and not seem weirded out. Then he asked if we were from around the area. I said, yeah, we live in the mountains by Highway 17. He replied, that's pretty far from here, isn't it? I said, it's like 30 to 45 minutes, so not too far. The sun was starting to get lower and it was getting dimmer. Mr. American Spirit reached into his duffel bag, pulled out some glasses and then a huge bottle of vodka. He asked if we wanted any. I said no, we're good. He insisted, come on, let's relax a little. I replied, nah, I need to drive. He said, suit yourself, then poured himself a big glass and drank it all at once. My girlfriend and I exchanged glances again, silently communicating. This is weird. We sat there in awkward silence for about 10 minutes. There was this weird tension in the air. Then out of nowhere he asked, so does anyone know you're out here? Wow, buddy, talk about a red flag. At this point I was getting annoyed because he was ruining the evening with his creepy questions. So I was short with him and said, yeah, most likely. He just nodded and didn't say anything. The whole interaction was just getting weirder, and I had this gut feeling something wasn't right. Eventually I asked my girlfriend, well, should we wrap it up? She immediately said yes. So I stood up and my girlfriend crawled into the Jeep. She went through the back seat into the front passenger. I closed the rear door, and as I did, the guy snapped his head toward me in this almost comically creepy way and said, how are you gonna get out if I'm blocking you in like this? At this point I'm just thinking, what the hell is wrong with this dude? But then I realized he had a good point. I tried to stay calm and said, I think I got it. I got inside my Jeep, locked the doors, and started it up. My girlfriend said she saw him start rummaging through his duffel bag again. By this point I was feeling a rush of adrenaline, and everything started moving fast. I wasn't paying much attention to him and I engaged the four-wheel drive. There was just enough space between his car and the cliff face for me to angle my driver's side up the cliff. My Jeep was tilted at a sharp 45-degree angle, which was sketchy because as I slammed the gas, I looked in my mirror and saw the guy walking quickly toward my side. I barely managed to get past his car without hitting it or flipping my Jeep onto it. Once I did, I peeled out of there. My girlfriend and I were like, holy hell. We looked back at the guy as we drove away. He was standing there with a blank expression, holding something long in his right hand close to his side. I don't know what it was. He just stood there for a second, then quickly started packing up his things. I had to pull over real quick to put my Jeep back into two-wheel drive before going faster down the road. We saw the guy pull out and drive away in the opposite direction. We never saw him again after that. I'll never park along Highway 1 near nighttime again. I was a major at George Mason University in Virginia, 2022. I've since graduated last spring with a degree in musical theater. I stayed another year because of credit issues, and during 2021 to 2024, I worked as an RA to keep myself productive. I enjoyed my job at times because I would throw events as RAs could do that, and I would also talk to other residents who lived in the dorms. Other times I would enjoy it, specifically this one time. The 2022 spring semester was coming right up, and I moved in a day earlier because I was asked to. The next day then came, and people were moving in. It was a busy day and I was tired of walking around, helping people move, and I barely got to sit down. Around 3 in the afternoon, a kid called Brandon arrives and was ready to move in. I introduced myself, checked him in, and he was all settled, but something about him made me feel a little off. He seemed very socially awkward. I assumed he was somewhere on the spectrum, but that didn't really bother me. I didn't worry too much about it and just helped everyone else move in for the rest of the day. It was now March, and I was having a pretty great semester to say the least. I got a part that I wanted, that I auditioned for, made a lot of new friends, and more importantly was getting good grades. I would rehearse every day, and one day a band joined the rehearsals. Once they came, I saw who everyone in the band was, and there was a face I recognized. It was Brandon, a guy who dormed in the building that I worked in. He was the drummer for the band, and I felt impressed that there was someone I knew outside of my classes that I would be seeing on a now regular basis, considering how big the college actually was. When we were in rehearsals together, he would continuously stare at me, and I felt quite uneasy, but I would just pretend that I didn't notice, and figured that he might have a crush on me. We worked together for about a month and a half. We had our show, and that was that. I was happy that I had finally finished that play for 2 reasons. 1, we worked our asses off and now we would have free time. And 2, Brandon wouldn't have to stare at me anymore. I would still have to see him because he stayed in the same building as me while I was working as an RA. Now in late April, there were 2 weeks left of school. Nothing happened for the next week, but a week later, something happened that never in a million years I thought would ever happen to me. On a Thursday night, it was my turn to work as the RA. Nothing happened for an hour, everything was chill, and I was on my phone scrolling through Instagram when all of a sudden, I heard footsteps approaching me. When I turned my head up, I saw pure horror. Right in front of me was a completely naked Brandon, who was smiling. I was then sending blow-up texts to all of my friends in the group chat about what was going on. As I was doing that, I heard another pair of footsteps. It was his roommate Steven. He was running and begged me not to call the resident hall director. I said okay and saw him literally pulling and dragging Brandon to their room, and then they went out of view. I was still processing what was going on, and decided that I would take a short walk to clear my brain. I listened to Steven and didn't call the resident hall director. Saturday then came and Brandon moved out. I had to act normal for my job. I saw his dad come and help him move out, and I helped him as well. Although I didn't tell my boss what he did, I did tell his dad. I expected him to completely lose it at Brandon, but quite frankly, he did the complete opposite. He assured me that he just has autism and that he isn't harmful. Using autism as an excuse for what he did, I then checked Brandon and his father out and he left, and I felt at peace as they were gone. I told a few friends what happened and they told me something even more devastating. The formal dance took place 2 weeks ago when I didn't end up going. At the formal, Brandon apparently took pictures under numerous girls' skirts, which included some of my friends. No girl knew about this until one guy told this to every girl who fell victim. I was disgusted. I never saw Brandon again after this. He either left school or moved to another campus, but the scene keeps replaying in my head every day, and I had to see a therapist shortly after. I'm pretty relieved I never have to see him again, and would preferably like to keep it that way. I am a female, and this story takes place when I was 18. I was hanging out with my friend one day when we ended up at her house for the evening, where she ended up falling asleep. Unable to fall asleep myself, I was bored and decided I wanted to see my boyfriend at the time. So I called him a few times, but after getting no response, I decided I could wait no longer and must go at that very moment. Yet instead of waking my friend up, I had the brilliant idea of walking there at night, 4 miles away, through long stretches of desolate road to an area that was known to be crime-ridden. I know, one of the dumbest things I've ever done, so after gathering up all my belongings I head out one night. Now as I'm making my way out of town to where my friend lives, I encountered the cops, who stopped me and asked me what I'm doing. I remembered feeling an almost sense of relief, as I had been increasingly feeling dread. I thought they would offer me a ride home, as I knew how far away it was, and that the area I was going to wasn't so great. So after telling them why I'm out there and where I'm going to, they asked for my ID, which I hand over with no issue. After checking it and handing it back, they pause. I remember that pause too, because there was a feeling in the air, and thought they must have felt it too. It was just a feeling that something bad was going to happen. I recall even getting a flash of them reading the newspaper the next morning with my missing picture in it. It was a very weird and surreal sensation. But after the pause, they bid me good evening, and I went back on my way trying to chalk up my feelings as imagination. Well, the first 3 miles were uneventful, but I continued to make my way through the night, finally getting closer to my destination. But this also meant I was going to be in the more dangerous part of this area. Now the road I was walking down was a main road, fairly heavier traffic, although less so later in the evening. Houses, apartments, and small businesses lined both sides of the streets. Well, as I was about 5 blocks away, I noticed the same van circling around. Immediately this got my radar up, as I was already on edge and paying close attention to my surroundings. Well, as I was around halfway down the particular block I was walking, I noticed the same van had come up the side street in front of me and sat at the end of it, not moving. There wasn't much traffic, so no real reason it should just be sitting there. Well, I stopped and waited because there was no way I was going to walk up to this car so they could grab me. Well, I stopped and waited because obviously there was no way I was going to walk up to this car so they could grab me. Obviously, at a standoff, the van eventually then turned left on the main road and stopped by me. I continued to walk quickly by as a man rolled down the window and yelled, "Hey, do you need a ride?" I looked over and noticed there was also a woman in the passenger seat looking at me expectantly. I did not check if there was anyone in the back. Now the thing about this area is that it was a heavy drug area, mainly crack and actual places you could drive up and buy it. Now, you grow accustomed to seeing drug addicts and their sunken in, hollowed out faces, so I knew these were drugs, without a doubt. Even so, I wasn't going to stick around anyway and quickly shook my head and kept walking, quickening my pace, and so eager to get home, my head on a swivel. Another 2 blocks I see a different vehicle. A pickup truck now stopped by me, and it was the same man from earlier. This time he yells out, "I got rid of her, do you want to get in now?" Well, now terrified and knowing these people had ill intent, I mean, why are you now in a pickup truck without that woman still looking for me? So, now I'm really hauling ass to get away from him and speed walking. I don't pay much attention to where he went exactly, as I'm happy to be coming up to the intersection that will take me to my home stretch, with a big hospital on the corner and also big concrete medians separating the lanes, which would make it impossible for a car to drive over to follow me. I knew this was my chance. Now my boyfriend lived across this intersection with a CVS on the corner and down an alley. I had to make a split-second decision. Do I run to the hospital and wait it out? Or do I go across and down the more main part of the street, or risk going through the CVS parking lot and down the alley? The alley I knew had a fence all along the side next to the house, so I knew they couldn't chase me through the yards. I quickly surveyed the area, but didn't see the van near me, so I made my decision. I flew across the intersection, through the CVS parking lot and ran like hell down the alley. I made it to my boyfriend's house, through opening the fence on the alley side, ran across the yard and up the long back stairs to bring me to the second floor to the only entrance at the back of the house. Finally making it upstairs out of breath and still terrified, I stopped at the top. This area was completely closed in, and I could easily see out of the alley without being seen. Well, like straight out of a nightmare, I looked down and saw the same man from the van at the beginning, slowly driving down the alley, clearly looking for me. Whether he saw me run up those stairs or was still continuing to look for me, I never found out. I do know that if they caught me, I likely would have never made it out alive.